Hey guys, so I'm going to be doing something new that I haven't done before. I'm going to be talking about a lot of the reptiles and amphibians I work with at an exotic pet store I co-op at. So I'll go through a whole bunch of different species, and as I said, this is the first time I've done something like this, so I apologize if the voice recording isn't the best in some parts. For some animals, I don't talk about them much, like only very briefly, but hopefully you enjoy the video. Here we go. So this is Seth the Burmese python. He's over 11 feet and over 60 pounds. Obviously very heavy. Definitely not good for beginners because they need huge enclosures and could potentially eat or kill you. He's in the back. I've held him a couple times, putting him away from reptile shows, as well as some other animals. So now I'm going to talk about ball pythons. They're very, very docile and come in lots of different morphs. They're slow moving, pretty good for beginners. They tend to be picky eaters, but usually when they go on a feeding strike, it's because of bad husbandry. Sometimes they only eat live, but lots also take frozen thawed. The ones that I fed at the pet center take live. I've only ever seen one defensive one at the pet center. Now this is a spotted python, no longer there. I loved her. She's very, very docile. I think the species in general is docile. Iridescent, as you can see. So now I'm going to talk about a few boa species. This is the jungle boa. This one is very docile. I don't know if the whole species is like that, but yeah, this one is very docile and slow moving. So this is a Kenyan sand boa. They're pretty good for beginners. Very docile. They don't get very big, about 3 feet, depending on gender. This is a boarding reptile I'm holding, so not for sale. They won't be there for long, but it was pretty fun to hold them. So this is a red-tailed boa. They're no longer at the pet center. I held them once and they didn't try to bite or anything, although there was this other red-tailed boa in a tub that was pretty defensive. Of course, it depends on the individual. So this is a baby western hognose. I got to interact with 4 babies and an adult. They're mildly venomous, but it's equivalent to a bee sting, so like not bad at all. They tend to be feisty as babies. 2 of these babies were, but they rarely bite. It's mostly like bluff striking and hissing. They don't get very big, about 3 feet, like Kenyan sand boas. So this is an adult water snake. This one was pretty docile. They get pretty long. So this is a baby water snake. It was much less tame than the adult. I think it tried to bite me and it musked on me, which is this gross, smelly liquid. Now this is a Honduran milk snake. They're quite docile. They don't really bite, but they tend to be flighty and wiggly with handling. This guy loved to burrow. He's not there anymore. And this is a Taiwanese beauty snake, not the tamest, kind of flighty and kind of defensive too when I've tried to handle them. Really active, also likes to burrow. And this is a carpet python. I forgot to mention it earlier with the other pythons. I've seen this one in this tank that's no longer there, and there was also one in a tub. They're not really handleable, pretty defensive, at least the ones that I've met. So now I'm going to move on to lizards. There are 2 tegus. This is an Argentine black and white tegu. I don't really interact with this one because I think they're a bit snappy. And this is the red tegu, Clifford. He's been there for years. He eats hornworms sometimes. I fed him fruit like mango and blackberries, and he also eats rats sometimes, as you can see in this picture. He's quite docile. Tegus are obviously quite advanced due to their size. They're very expensive and require massive enclosures. So this is Legolas the legless lizard, really cool. He's really enthusiastic about food. I've fed him hornworms before. He usually eats crickets. He also eats occasional pinkies. I have some gifs of him. I wish I could include them in this video. One time he actually went after the nozzle of the spray bottle I was using to spray his tank. And this is Gary the blue-tongued skink. He's very docile. The species is very docile in general. Blue-tongued skinks require pretty big enclosures and a very varied diet with like things like cat food and stuff like that, dog food, maybe fish, insects, like things like that, lots of other stuff. There are a couple of other skinks that were on the floor that were pretty defensive and hissing a lot, but yeah, the species is usually very docile. They're about intermediate. So I've worked with a lot of bearded dragons. They're very popular. They're about intermediate. I mean, they require really big enclosures as well as greens and insects and special lighting. They can be quite expensive, but they're very docile and handleable. The ones at the pet center have been like great eaters. I don't think there's really anything else to say about them. This is an adult Chinese water dragon. I've worked with adults and babies at the pet center. They're not really for beginners. So this is a green anole, one of the few communal reptiles. The pet center has these guys housed with long-tailed lizards and frogs. I'm not sure if that's the best thing, but anyway, so they're not very handleable. And this is a Cuban net anole, again, not handleable. So this is a long-tailed lizard. They're kind of handleable, as you can see in the picture. Not the most handleable, like definitely not anything like a leopard gecko, but you can kind of handle them. It's best to usually leave them alone, though. And this is a Euromastix. This guy was pretty shy. He's not here anymore. They eat like birdseed and greens and stuff. And this is a green basilisk. Definitely not handleable. He's very skittish, always runs around when I open the enclosure. This is a red-headed agama. He's not at the pet center anymore. Definitely not handleable. He was quite skittish, running around when I opened his enclosure. And these are some butterfly agamas that are still there. Much calmer than the red-headed agama. Now this is a Gila monster, a venomous lizard. I'm not allowed to interact with him for obvious reasons. So this is an emerald swift. They're definitely not very handleable. If you want a reptile you can handle, more display. Probably not the best for beginners either, and not the most easily available. This is a giant green Amieva. Definitely not handleable. He always flips out when I get into the tank. I can't even touch him. I'm surprised I got such a good picture. So more of a display animal. I don't think they're very easy to find either. So this is a Leachianus gecko. I'm going to show you a lot of New Caledonian geckos. New Caledonian geckos tend to need high humidity, low temperatures, tall tanks. They eat mostly like Pangea or Apache, like a powdered fruit diet, occasional insects. So Leachianus geckos or lychees aren't the best for beginners. I handled this guy without much trouble. I only handled him like once. They're actually the biggest gecko species in the world, so they're pretty cool. And this is a gargoyle gecko. They're pretty good for beginners. Any New Caledonian gecko can be prone to jumping. New Caledonian geckos do this thing called firing up or firing down. Their colors change, sometimes drastically. It's pretty cool. And this is a Chihuahua, aka a mossy prehensile-tailed gecko, another New Caledonian gecko. You might know them from the channel Leopard Gecko Talk. They're not the most handleable, not as much as Cresties and Gargs. They're still handleable, just a bit faster. I haven't handled this guy really easily. This guy in particular loves insects. And these are crested geckos. I probably should have started with these when I started talking about New Caledonian geckos. They're very popular, great for beginners, very easily available. You can find them pretty much everywhere. The things that apply to the other New Caledonian geckos apply to them. Temperature shouldn't get above 80 because that would probably kill them. They need really low temperatures. They tend to jump, as well as the other New Caledonian geckos. And this is a Henkel's leaf-tailed gecko. There are also mossy leaf-tailed geckos and satanic leaf-tailed geckos. They're not handleable, not really for beginners, but they're pretty cool. Another New Caledonian gecko, and the last I'll be talking about. And this is a leopard gecko. I have a leopard gecko myself. I'm going to be doing a bunch of care videos on them. I know a lot about them. They're great for beginners, very easy to care for, very handleable, come in lots of different morphs. This is a Bell albino here. And this is another morph. As you can see, they're on sand, unfortunately. That's definitely not the best option. I'll talk about that in a substrate video for leopard geckos. It can be very dangerous. Anyway, this guy, he kind of screamed and bit me. Baby leopard geckos can do that sometimes, but it doesn't hurt, and they definitely grow out of it. They're really docile as adults. And this is an African fat-tailed gecko. They're very similar to leopard geckos. They're very docile, easy care. Basically, the only care difference is that they need a bit of a higher humidity. As you can see, their colors are a bit different. And they obviously come from Africa instead of Asia like leopard geckos. And this is a mountain horned dragon. I don't know too much about these guys. They're pretty new at the store. I don't believe they're good for beginners, and I don't think they're really too easy to find either, but they're pretty cool. Moving on to turtles and tortoises. This is Mimi the box turtle. She eats greens. Box turtles can also eat some insects like superworms and stuff. This is a sulcata tortoise, a baby. They get really big, and tortoises always have long lifespans, so you need to keep that in mind when you get one. They're a long commitment. And this is Oliver the red-footed tortoise. Yeah, tortoises, like box turtles, eats a lot of greens and stuff. Well, actually, it does depend. Some eat like grasses and stuff like sulcata tortoises. And this is a Brooks king snake. I'm just going to talk about a few snakes here. They're really pretty, as you can see. This guy kind of tried to bite me when I took him out. He didn't break the skin. King snakes can be a bit nippy, but I think they're pretty good for beginners other than that. And this is a Mexican black king snake. Not the best picture. This guy is apparently pretty defensive, so I haven't really handled him. And this is a corn snake. I have one myself, and I'm going to be doing a few care videos on them. They're really good for beginners, very docile, very handleable, very easy to care for. They're also great eaters, unlike some snakes like ball pythons tend to be. They're pretty active too. They need really large enclosures. They're definitely less chill than ball pythons. They often move a lot when you handle them. And I will end this video showing you a few amphibians, including a couple of species of dart frogs. They're very pretty, as you can see. I think these guys are called Vietnamese blue tree frogs. Pretty cool. And this is a type of salamander. So that's about it. I'm going to wrap up this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments or leave suggestions for future videos. This pet store is pretty good. Its care is pretty good. It's definitely not perfect, but it's better than most pet stores. I really enjoy working there. And see you in the next video.